Hi, everybody. This is Liz Fenton, and I'm here with Lisa Steinke, who is my BFF of over 30 years and co-author of 7 novels. The ginormous posters behind us is our 7th novel that is coming out this Tuesday, How to Save a Life. It's a dark, heart-pounding love story with a Groundhog Day twist, and I'll let Julie get into it, but you can order personalized copies from there. So we're so excited to have Cara Wall today, but also to partner with Warwick. So Julie, take it away.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Liz. And thank you to Liz and Lisa for coming up with the Couchsurfing book tour. This has been so much fun. We were just talking in the green room a little bit about it. We've done a lot of these and we see a lot of the same ladies here. So you're going to have to, if you've been here before, you're going to have to excuse me because I say the same thing pretty much every week that we do this. So Warwick's is now open for business. And we are, so come, if you live in San Diego, come to La Jolla, come visit us. We are, like I said, we're open, social distancing, masks, the whole 9 yards. But I also like to say any way that you can get a book, you can get it from Warwick. So if you haven't already ordered Cara's book, I'm going to put a link in there. You can order it. I mean, call us. You can come pick it up if you're local. We'll ship it to you. So any way that you can do that. And then I'm going to give a little bit, and I'm going to put Liz and Lisa's book in there as well and give a little plug. Next week, for those of you, we're going to be switching the couch around, and I'm going to be interviewing Liz and Lisa on the couch surfing. So it'll be a really fun week next week too. So anyways, with that, Cara, welcome to Warwick's. We're so glad that you're here. And back to you, Liz.
All right. So Cara, we're so excited to have you today and chat with you. And here is a little bit about her. She is a graduate of the Iowa Writers Workshop in Stanford University. While at Iowa, Cara taught fiction writing in the undergraduate creative writing department, as well as the Iowa Young Writer Studio in her capacity of founder and inaugural director. She went on to teach middle school English and history and has been published by Glamour, Salon, and the San Francisco Chronicle. She lives in New York City with her family. Her debut novel, The Dearly Beloved, was published in 2019, and it came out in paperback this week, or July 7th, which was, I don't even know what day it is, but it was 2 days ago. Sorry. Anyway, so excited to talk to you. So Lisa, we're going to put you in the hot seat, and Lisa's going to ask you some questions.
Get ready. Get ready. These are hard-hitting questions, Cara. Welcome. Can you just hold up your paperback? I have your beautiful hardback here, but let's show your paperback to everyone.
Very, very different.
Yeah, covers. I'm going to ask you about that actually. But first, The Dearly Beloved was a huge hit when it came out last year. And among other accolades, a Today Show read with Jenna Book Club selection. Jenna Bush has high praise for your novel. This gentle, gorgeously written book may be one of my favorites ever, she said. What is The Dearly Beloved about?
So The Dearly Beloved follows 2 couples, Charles and Lily and James and Nan, from just before they meet. Each couple meets through their courtship and through their first life crises. And the couples come together when the 2 men are called to be co-pastors at a church in Greenwich Village in 1963. So that it's in itself is a little bit of a strange situation. Churches don't usually have co-pastors. But what's a stranger situation is that every character has a very different experience of faith. And in fact, Lily, who marries Charles, he's a minister who actually has a sort of mystical call to ministry, and she's a devout atheist. So that's some of where the tension lies. The other tension is that the 2 women, the wives, hate each other at first sight. So we have tension. We're following 2 very different couples as they explore their early marriages, and then we're exploring the way that the people make friends and learn how to trust each other. And I've always been really fascinated about how we become friends. You know, you meet someone random and you meet for coffee, and then you have dinner, and then you go to a barbecue, and then suddenly you're friends. So that was something I really wanted to explore. Yeah.
So how did the idea come about? Because I read that it took you like around 13 years. Well, you wrote the first draft in 2 weeks, right?
Yes.
Of the whole book. And then 13 years later, here it is. So can you give us a little bit more about
Yeah, yeah.
What went on in those 13 years?
I wrote it really quickly. So for me, the process of writing is I try to get the bare bones down, and then I add and add and add and add and add and edit and edit. But I didn't write it every day for 13 years. I mean, that would be very depressing if that had been true. I took time, I wrote a draft, I took some time off, I had to get a job, I taught school while I was teaching it. So then I was working summers, then I had my daughter, I took time off from work and from writing. And I think so my daughter is about to turn 16. I think when she was maybe in 3rd grade, I realized that I really had to knuckle down and do it, because I had to model for her the fact that you have to go for it. And part of going for it is just doing the really hard work of showing up every single day. So I did that. And she had just joined a choir, a pretty professional choir, and she had 2-hour rehearsals twice a week. So I sat in a Starbucks in Brooklyn and really worked hard for 4 hours a week at least. So that's why it took so long.
Okay, well, we're glad it's here now. You also said the 4 characters, James, Fran, Charles, and Lily, sort of sprang to you fully formed. So how does that happen?
So I was reading a book. I don't know if anyone here has read any Laurie Colwin, but she has a book called Happy All the Time, and it does sort of what my book does. She's one of my favorite authors. It follows 2 couples through their early marriages, and I read it and I was like, well, I could probably do that. I mean it was so I did, but immediately when I thought that, these 4 characters jumped into my mind, and they're loosely based on they're inspired by the characters I grew up with, so the ministers that I grew up with in my church and their wives. So they were pretty clear people to me. And I was really lucky in this book. All of the characters just kind of popped up and they were fully formed. And I just sort of had to watch them do what they were going to do. So like Jane Atlas is awesome. And she just was a fully formed person before I even started writing about her. So
that's helpful. That saves a lot of time.
It does. It's not happening with the next book.
Okay. Well, yeah, I was going to ask you, because that's amazing. And I think that when that happens, it's really obvious. I think this is why this book has been such a huge success. When you just know what your book's about and who your characters are, you can do the most beautiful writing. You said it in the 60s. I'm curious. I know that, you've based it a little bit on your own family and their past, but it's not about them. But I was curious, was it always the 60s? Did anything about this book change a ton, or did it pretty much stay the same throughout and you just enhanced what was already there?
Pretty much stayed the same. I mean, so my parents arrived in New York in 1965. So it's always been from smaller towns, about California and Arkansas. So it always just seemed like a really before and after time in our family history. But I did think about it. So I think I just chose it a little bit randomly. And then as I was writing it, I was like, okay, is this the best time to set it? Is this when it should be happening? But it works because it was a time of social upheaval, especially in New York. And you have these very classic characters who were not protesters or flower children or anything. They were people who'd grown up in the 50s and had been expected to go to good colleges and get good jobs. And so there was a lot of societal tension going on too, which I think worked. It worked for the characters. Right. I also had very early set it right after, during the Korean War, and the early part of it, and I didn't really want to rework that part. That part worked too. So There's just a lot of serendipitous, the inspiration was being kind to me.
It all just came together, which is such a great story. I mean, I just kept reading. I was like, your story was just getting better. I'm going to fast forward just because this plays into what we're talking about. Yeah. How you got your agent is another really kismet, amazing story that you should share.
So I At some point I just said, I have to finish this for myself. I'm going to finish this for myself. So I had an agent a lot, like early on in the book, and he really wanted me to make some big changes that I tried to do that didn't work. So we parted ways, and I finally finished it. And I was like, I finished it. I'm just going to put it away for a while. I feel very proud that I finished it. And then I went to a mom's night out at my daughter's school, and I sat next to a woman I'd never met before. It turned out her son was in my daughter's class, but it was sort of 5th grade, and the boys and the girls weren't mixing yet, so I didn't know her. And she was just going back to work at her agency. So she'd taken time off for her children too, and she'd just gone back to work. And she said, well, I don't feel ready to do this for you yet, but I'm going to pass it on to someone at my agency. And that person didn't want it. And so a year later, Wendy came back to me and said, I'm ready. I want to take this book out. And it's awesome. So she was the first woman of my age and my contemporary who was going back to work. And I now have a whole team of them. So my editor at Simon & Schuster is about my age, and she's a single mom. And the woman who did my audiobook is my age and took time off to have her kids. So I have this amazing team of women who have been championing this book. It's been amazing.
That is amazing. And you talked about your editor as well. I read about because the Dearly Beloved went through 3 full rounds of edits, right? And so that was quite a process for you.
Pretty much. I mean, we weren't changing the whole book, but it was definitely a whole read through of the book and 3 full read throughs of it. And then each time I made a big change. So one of the edits was to really help people understand why Lily and Charles fell in love and why they decided to get married. That wasn't quite as clear. One was to make sure that Nan had enough airtime, because I really wanted it to be an ensemble piece, and she was coming off as a secondary character. And one was, this is not the ending that Mary Sue read first. So the ending is different. So
Okay.
She saved that one for last. That I was like, no, I love
Is that the added prologue? Because the ending line is the same, right? You said you knew the ending line before you wrote the entire book, correct?
I did know the ending of the book. The epilogue was the very last thing I wrote. I mean,
epilogue, yeah. Yeah,
and so once I changed the ending of the story, Mary Sue said, and now you have to write an epilogue. And I was like, great.
That's good that she saved that for last.
She did.
That's like brand new words that you just have to come up with.
Those brand new words, but I wrote the epilogue in 45 minutes.
Oh my gosh, okay.
And that's how the book was done. Like I was like, oh yeah, the book is totally done, because that just came out.
Can you tell us that line? It's so beautiful, the ending line. You know it by heart?
Just the very ending line, the trees had thrown down the confetti for New Year. Yeah.
That's so pretty. And you knew that like before you jumped into
I think I might have known that before I finished the book, but yeah.
Right. That is amazing.
So there's a church, not the church where I grew up, but there's the church that's connected to the school where my daughter went to school used to have this huge cherry tree or magnolia tree, something. I'm not a botanist, but every spring it would just, it would just shed all its leaves at once. It just looked like there had been a huge party. And so it was always an image I wanted to use.
That's a beautiful image. Was it your editor or your agent or both of them that came over to help you in the editing process? Because you write by hand, which we need to talk about. I'm always fascinated when I hear it. And so you were cutting, and I had this visual of you cutting and pasting words, and literally.
I had 2 small diva moments with my agent. I'm pretty self-sufficient, but one was just, I was having some trouble with a timeline, and I don't think spatially. I'm not a linear thinker. So I had all these sections out when I was adding stuff, and I was like, ugh. And so she came over and read them and kind of moved them around. But my bigger diva moment was that I had this wonderfully thorough copy editor who questioned everything And I just, the moment, and he was right, except that he also, there was a moment where there's a line in the book that says flat, it was flat as an answer. And he was like, well, it can't be that, it's not grammatically correct. And he said, it has to be flat like an answer. And I was like, but that's not poetic. You gotta let me have this line. And so then I just had a little like, oh my God, I can't do this. And so Wendy came and sat next to me and we talked about some of that kind of copy editing. He also really wanted he really wanted the timeline to be correct. And I had to make a whole I had to make a spreadsheet for him.
You had to make it? Usually they'd make it. They made you make it?
There was some stuff missing.
Okay.
I think at some point I had cut chapters, and so he was right. He was great, and he saved me from a lot of errors. But I needed a little help. I needed someone to come and hold my hand. Yeah.
But the writing by hand. I mean, what led you down that path to say, oh, I'm not going to use the computer?
So by the very first book I ever read about writing was as I was a sophomore in high school, and it's called Writing Down the Bones by Natalie Goldberg. And her whole theory is that you sit down with a notebook and a pen and you just write writing prompts. I also took a class based on this where the writing prompt was always I remember. And the whole point was you just wrote I remember until stuff started coming out of you, really good writing. So that was just the first way I wrote. And I had always kept journals and notebooks. I mean, I've been journaling since before there were computers. So like
haven't we all, girl? Yeah. I got a Hello Kitty one. So, I have a Hello Kitty one in my drawer.
And I still think when I get stuck, that's how I get in the zone. But
I just wouldn't be able to read my own writing. That would be a huge problem.
I can't read my own writing. I'm sure that I have brilliant passages that I can't read.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I still do it. I now, but now when I don't have to actually type it in. I can talk to type now. So I can just put my notebooks into Google Docs, which is great. Saves a lot of time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to break in really quick and just remind you guys that you can ask Cara questions in the chat. So over in the chat, you can ask her anything or you can comment. Jesse's saying, wow, you wrote it all by hand, and I have to agree with her sentiment. Anyway, Lisa, back to you.
Yes, please ask questions because your guys' questions are always better than mine. I ask a lot of questions like what an author would want to know from another author. So readers always have the best questions. So please jump in. So let's talk about these covers. We mentioned them earlier. They're both beautiful, but very different, which isn't always the case when a hardback goes to paperback. So can you tell us the story and what your involvement was?
I'm not a visual person, nor am I an artist. So I didn't feel strongly. I mean, I chose Simon & Schuster because I knew they were good at selling books. So I said, you guys, the one thing they sent me was, is there anything you don't want on the cover? So I guess they used an example of a woman who really didn't want shoes on her cover. She didn't want to see anybody's shoes on the cover. So I was like, no, I don't think so. So I let them do their work, and I got to veto. I think I got 3 vetoes. So I vetoed the first 3 of the hardback. I didn't like them. And then they came back with that, and I was like, okay, I like that. This, I didn't know I was really getting a new cover. I think this was sort of a summer sales decision that this was going to come out in June, but got pushed back for the pandemic. And I didn't have as many choices. It was sort of these people more close up. I think there was one that was just hands, and there was this one, and I liked this one the best. But I didn't even see this colorized in this way until I got it. Partly because I just said, you guys do it. I mean,
yeah, you do.
I could have asked for more.
Right.
You know,
it came out really, I love both of them.
I think that's James. I think that's Nan. I think it really captures the historical feel
Yeah, and it's
like
nice to have two different covers. Like, you know, you're having two different book launches, you know, now you've got a different cover to show, and I like it.
I like it too.
And then the title changed.
Oh, yeah.
It had, so what was the original title?
So I am a terrible titleist. Oops, see, my book agrees. I I had a really hard time titling it. I only titled it because I knew it needed a title, and the title was Everything There Is to Know. But by the time I sold the book, you know, we had All the Light We Cannot See. I mean, like long titles were sort of going out. And Mary Sue said, "Do you mind if we change the title?" And I said, "No, but I can't think of one. So you have to think of one. Like, you guys, Simon Schuster has to figure out what to call this book." And she didn't give me a choice. She called me back. They had a big meeting about it, and she said, "It's The Dearly Beloved." And I was like, "Ooh, okay." I mean, but she talked me through it, and now I think it's the perfect name for the book.
Right. It's always weird to hear a new title after you had this title in your head connected, and you had it in your head for a long time.
I did.
So
I guess you guys choose your titles together?
Yeah, we usually do if they stay.
Okay.
And we'll choose one, and then it will go to, you know, our editor, and it may or may not change. This one stayed. How to Save a Life was the original title, but we had some change. It's kind of
I think we've had three. Yeah, 3 of the 7 have changed.
To be exact, how do you even know that?
I don't know. I just remember they changed Your Perfect Life wasn't Your Perfect Life, and The Good Widow, and the 2 Lila Bennetts. We had like really crappy. We had like placeholder titles on them as we knew, like, in all 3 except maybe the first one, which was a debut, and we didn't understand how publishing worked. But the other one, we knew they weren't staying. They were just
I knew that it wasn't going to be Everything There Is to Know. So I get that.
I do like that, though. You could still use that for another book sometime. Sounds amazing.
Yeah, maybe we'll use it. No, I was kidding. But it is really good. I'm gonna break in here. We've got a comment and a question from Tori. She says, "I don't have a question, but The Dearly Beloved was my favorite book of 2019 and is definitely one of my all-time faves. It moved me to tears more than one time, and I hugged it when I finished it, and I love the hardback cover." I hugged a book too before, Tori. That's crazy.
So nice.
Really?
Go.
Hug it. That's awesome. And then we have a comment and a question from Lorraine. "I listened to your novel many months ago and loved it. I can't remember the character's name, but she moved in to help them with their son with autism. Why did you happen to bring autism into the fold?"
Oh, so that's also based on real life. So one of my ministers growing up had an autistic son, and he was much older than I was, but I remember him from my childhood. And I thought, so I also used to teach, and so I counseled parents. You know, I had a lot of education in autism and learning differences, and counseled parents. And I thought the idea of a minister who was told that his son could never understand the concept of God because it was too abstract was a very interesting philosophical idea to explore. And in real life, the minister's wife, who was the son, so was sort of the Lily character, but she's not anything like Lily in real life, actually ended up she was a public school teacher, and there were absolutely no educational opportunities for children with autism, especially in the early 60s. And she was a pioneer in education, autism education, and she started a school for autistic children in our church. It's a public school, but the church houses them, and it's still there today. So that's true. I mean, I didn't interview her about her exact experience, but the facts of it are true. Yeah.
You had said, just on that note, the book was inspired, by the childhood church you grew up in, and your mom had worked at this church, and you had a lot of connection to it. But you did say, "It feels important to me to say that Charles and Lily and James and Nan are utterly fictional characters. And then you went on to say you took 3 facts from your childhood church. There were co-ministers, one had an autistic son, and a school for autistic children was built in the church building. And from those facts, I spun a very different story from the truth, a story very different from the truth.
Yeah.
Do you get that a lot? Like, is this book about your life? Are you any of these people?
Not as often as, I mean, not that often, which I'm thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get a lot. One thing that's really surprised me is how often people are Team Nan or Team Lily, and how much animosity they have for the other one, which always makes me a little bit uncomfortable because I portioned out the not so nice parts of myself in each one. So whichever one they dislike, So that's really where the conversation goes. Like, did you like Lily or Nan better? And I was really surprised by that. So
does it go one way or the other more? Are there more on one side?
No, they're very
pretty split.
And I'm always, I mean, like, one of my friend's husbands took me out for dinner because he was so surprised I actually got my life together and wrote a book. And he loved it, but he was like, I just hate Lily. And I was like, oh my God, well, how?
Oh,
like, why?
Really?
Yeah, it was.
That's a testament of, that's a good book then. If you got a guy in there and then he's taking you to dinner to talk about it.
Yeah, and then he hated Lily. So I was like, okay, well.
You're like, thanks for dinner.
But my other question to people is like, well, then did you love Nan? And he was like, not really. He liked Charles. So I was like, okay, well, good. That's good.
Okay, we got one of the 4.
There's a comment here. Jesse's saying, I work with children who have autism in their classrooms. I help them gain independence. It's a very rewarding job. I love to see their improvements. Every child I work with, we're very smart in their unique ways. And then we have a question from Martha. She says she's also a huge Lori Colwin fan. What other writers are you reading these days? And she hugged your book too when she finished. Wow.
Wow.
I love that.
This is a movement
we've done. No one's talked about hugging. You guys better hug our book when you're done now. Now we know that that's a thing. I better happen.
I just finished reading Writers and Lovers, which is also a Jenna Book Club pick. I also just finished The Great Believers, which I love. That is a good one for this time period. It's set in the AIDS epidemic in Chicago in the 1980s, but it's not about, I mean, it is about that, but it's more that's the setting. And then just like a way to explore your thoughts about this pandemic too, I think, which I loved. I just finished Heavy by Kiese Lemon, which is a memoir and amazing. But I really recommend listening to it because he reads it and he's fantastic. And the person who reads The Great Believers is also, I don't know who he is, but I had a huge crush on him. I think Robin read me my bedtime stories anytime.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love that.
I had an audiobook narrator like that too. It was for the Marriage Pact. I think it was called The Marriage Pact. And I want to say the narrator, it was something like Taylor Taylorson, or like, it was like a name. I'll have to look it up now. I may have to look it up while we're on this call. But he did this Irish accent for part of it. I was like, hello. So yes.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Moving on.
Oh my gosh. I love it. Okay, back to me, or do we have?
Well, Martha just commented, so now we start a movement where we hug the narrators. That's
okay,
funny.
Good. I like that.
And Tori is saying, well, Julie is talking about Libro.fm as a way to order audiobooks and support Warwick's. That is fantastic, Julie. And Tori is saying she read Crossing to Safety recently, and it reminded her of The Dearly Beloved.
I have never read Crossing to Safety. Isn't that terrible? I started it after I had started writing the book, and I was like, I can't read this. It's going to jumble everything up for me. So it's on my list to read this summer. I'll get to it. Yeah.
What was it like to be on the Today Show? I mean, that is like human. And you did. I watched it, You did a really good job. You did not seem nervous at all. So I want to know the behind the scenes, like, were you nervous? Because you did great.
I was nervous. You know, I was a teacher for a long time, so I don't mind being in front of people. They're so well organized. I can't say enough about every team that I interacted with at the Today Show, but I was really nervous. I mean, I had Glam Squad come to my house, because I'm not I don't know how to do all that stuff to myself, and they were late, and then I was really nervous. But my agent went with me, and we were in the green room with Henry Winkler.
Woo, the fun!
I know. And they just tell you exactly what's going to happen. So I knew the questions ahead of time. I had gone over with my answers with the producer, and she sort of asked me 5 questions, and then I came up with the answers, and I think they chose the questions based on the answers they liked best. And then you go in. So I had a lot of serendipitous things. A friend of my partner's had a daughter who makes sets for the Today Show, and she texted us and said, "I'm building Cara's set for tomorrow." So they build your own set, and then the hosts just move from set to set. So they brought me and sat me down on the couch. They lined up all the cameras and everything, and then Hoda and Maria just came over, and they're like, I don't know how to explain their energy. It's just like a supernova is coming at you. They're just telegraphing their energy for the cameras. So there's a moment where you're like, oh my God, and then you have to just go with it. Mm-hmm. But they're pros, and they're keeping time in their head, and we had 6 minutes exactly, and there's a clock counting down, but it was super fun. I mean, I felt really very,
You nailed it. So
Thank you.
That would be like an incredible experience. So I'm happy that you had that.
Yeah, it was fun.
It's amazing.
They make it easy though. They make it easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But still, you did. Can we talk a little bit about your second book? One thing I thought was interesting is you said the prologues for the Dearly Beloved and your next book, Provenance, were part of your application to the Iowa Writers Workshop.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that?
So the Dearly Beloved was supposed to be my practice book for this book that I'm writing now, because this one's a little more complicated. I mean, it turned out that Dearly Beloved was more complicated than I thought it was going to be, but it's called Provenance. It's and many of you probably know, but in the art world, provenance is the word for the history of a painting or a piece of art. So it's like your receipts, so that you legally own the painting or who it really belongs to. And this is about a painting that gets left on the steps of the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. One of my first jobs was as an intern in the Costume Institute. And I spent all summer underground in the vaults, cataloging, making sure all of Jackie O's clothes were hung in the right order.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was in a dungeon. I wasn't in a dungeon, but I was underground all summer, but it was really fun. So I'm going back to that time period of the early 90s, and this painting gets left on the steps of the Met. And it's found by a curator who's on the last legs of his career, and he wants to figure out who it is so he can write a book and sort of retire in style. And he sends his research assistant out to figure out what this book is. What this painting is. And so we have that present story of her searching for the history of painting, and then the historical story, which I can't say too much about because it'll, it's a little bit of a mystery, but it's a woman who is, she's a painter in the years after World War II in Italy. And so these two women are connected through this painting, though they never meet. But the painting itself is an Annunziata, which is a painting of the moment when Mary is told by Gabriel she's going to be the mother of God. So I'm not entirely getting away from the church, mm-hmm. But it's a 13th or 14th century painting, and these two women are very invested in it. So,
are you still working on it, or is it?
Oh, I have a deal for it. It's supposed to be out.
Right.
October of 2022. So
Okay.
but I haven't
So
I haven't turned anything in to my editor yet, but I'm working.
Okay. How has it been different from writing your first book?
I don't know if you guys feel this way, but I knew the characters in the Dearly Beloved so well, and now I just don't know these characters yet. I mean, I've made a lot of progress this month, so I'm getting to know them, but it's hard. It's like making new friends. It's like moving to a whole new city and it's like moving to a whole new country, really, and having to create a whole new set of friends and get them to trust you. So
yeah, I think I've always said this to Lisa. I feel like every book is its own like encapsulated experience and its own beast. And some are very easy and you feel like you know them and you feel like you have a mission while you're writing them, and some feel very like loose and am I going in the right direction and will I get there, and then you've got to go back and do rewrites because you realize you didn't know the characters as well as you thought you did in the beginning when you get to the 80 percentile, right?
Yeah I know the painting really well, so I'm really attached to the painting, and I'm having to let the characters have their own feelings about the painting now. So we'll see.
That's awesome. There's a question here from Ellen. Now that you're writing your second book, do you have a daily writing routine?
I should have a better one. I was doing really well when my daughter was still in virtual school, because while she was in virtual school, I would write in real life, and that was great. But since she's been out of school, it's been a little more chaotic. Ideally, I write. When I really commit myself to a book, I allow 3 hours so that I have 2 hours of actual putting words on the page. I don't have an office. I don't have a desk. I write in my bed. I just talked about this on my Instagram.
You write in your bed? Oh.
That's I like
with your notebook. You and your notebook are just laying in the bed. I love it.
Or on my couch. I like to recline, or in coffee shops. So when I was writing The Dearly Beloved, I wrote it all in this wonderful coffee shop, and then it closed. And so it really actually delayed my writing of the second book by like a couple of years, because I couldn't find a good place to write. So it's not the most professional answer to that question, but I do think I need to write first thing in the morning, or I sort of lose. I can get into it later, and I certainly can edit later in the day, but I lose sort of the magical sense of it. And this book has it's not magical realism, but it's sort of set in a magical place, set on Capri. Part of it is set on the island of Capri. So I need that magic to kind of still be alive for this one. So I'm not a morning person, but I'm trying to write more of this book in the morning.
Right. Yeah. I'm the same way. I'm better in the I can edit anytime, but if I want something magical, wake up in that morning and it's quiet and you have your coffee and there's something. I'm very impressed that you can write in bed. We may have to talk offline, because I'd like to write in bed. I just don't know if I could. That sounds really nice.
It's nice. Yeah, it's good.
Randy's asking, have you ever been to Capri?
Yes, I had a magical weekend in Capri when I was studying in Italy in college, and I chose it partly because of that, but partly because it was important in World War II. The American Army stationed a bunch of their battleships, etc., there, but it wasn't in the thick of the fighting in Italy. So it was affected by World War II, but not destroyed or didn't really have any battles there. So it was a good sort of neutral place to have people walking around, or characters. Yeah.
It's beautiful. So tell everybody where we can find you online and in social media.
So I'm most active on Instagram. I have some nice 14 and 15-year-old helpers who've gotten me up to speed on Instagram. And I have a website, carawall.com. And on Instagram, I'm Cara Wall author. Okay. And I like the Instagram because one of the great things about read with Jenna is that Jenna just champions her authors continually. So we'll pop up on her feed sometimes too. And I don't know, so I can integrate everything there.
Yeah.
Instagram or online. Yeah.
That's awesome. So you guys find Cara there, and then you can find us on Instagram at Lisa and Liz, at Facebook at Liz Fenton and Lisa and Liz Fenton and Lisa Stanky, and our website where we have all these events listed is lizandlisa.com. You can click on the event button or /events. And Cara, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you today. I'm going to pass it to Julie. You can remind them of the events coming up next week. Are you muted? Oh, well, yeah, okay. Now you should be able to unmute.
I'm muted.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Sorry.
My big old face on there. Anyways, Cara, thank you. Yes, you can, I put a link on there, but you can go to warwicks.com, and everybody, these are the times when authors, bookstores, everybody needs as much help as we can get. So any extra dollars you have, buy from an independent bookstore. We really appreciate it when you do. And let's get Cara's book on the New York Times list, the paperback, right? Let's get it there. Cara, it's been great having you. The next book sounds amazing. And yeah, let's have a lot of love for Mary Sue. Is she not the best person on the face of the earth?
She is the best.
She is the best.
It really is.
All right.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thank you. And don't forget, you guys, next Wednesday, we're turning the couches, and we'll be here. We'll be the guests with Julie interviewing us. So
I can't wait.
I'm sure we'll have lots of fun. So we hope that you guys will join us. And that is at the same time at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. So thank you again, Cara.
Thank you.
Just wishing you so much success. And thank you, everybody, for swinging by. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.